So it looks like we might well have some great big leaks for the new Emperor's Children Codex, the profile and stat line of Fulgrim, the army rule, the units in and out of the Codex, and a fair bit more besides. So let's talk through the content of the rumours and whether they're looking real or fake. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Emperor's Children, and in this one I thought we'd address the big leaks that have been circulating the internet, which claim to have a whole bunch of details from inside the new codex. As we know, Emperor's Children are going to hit Warhammer 40k in the not too distant future. They're essentially a whole new major faction to the game, being expanded from a sub-faction of Chaos Space Marines. We've seen their nice new model range with fancy new Noise Marines and a Demon Primarch Fulgrim and much more, and it seems very likely that their first launch will be with this big Champions of Slaanesh box set, which Games Workshop on their Codex roadmap basically said was right now. It looks like they've not announced it for pre-order on this Sunday preview, but there's a very possible chance that it happens on the next one, and perhaps an even better chance that it's sometime within the next 2 weeks. In their preview stream, where they did the full faction unveil in January, they actually gave us really quite a lot of info about the new book, perhaps a little bit more than normal when they talk about new armies and rules. So of course people have been very interested to hear anything more of the new book. Games Workshop haven't given us anything since. That might well have changed now though, as it looks like there's some leaks circling the internet. Before we get into leak things though, while we're on the subject of Emperor's Children, I will just mention that the channel giveaway for March is for the Champions of Slaanesh box set, 8 channel viewers getting their hands on one of those. That will be done towards the start of March, and if you'd like to enter for that, I'll talk through the giveaway at the end of the video. Getting back to the leaks though, for the source of these, it looks like these were posted to Discord Saturday morning, and then were really quite rapidly shared across a whole bunch of other faction discords as well, as word got around that there was news. The leaks themselves are text leaks, so we don't have any pictures of the codex, and it does mean that they'd be pretty easy to fake if someone was able to and had a good understanding of the army, though obviously they have to be taken with a whole bunch of suspicion, at least compared with if there were full codex scans circulating in the wild. From what I gather, the leaker does have some previous form and rep though for having some previously accurate predictions, though that's not something I'd be able to verify myself. Having looked through them though, I feel like pretty much all of them seem very plausible indeed to me. I think literally everything that they've said is very consistent with what Games Workshop have stated and teased so far in their reveal stream and preview articles. It looks like they might also explain the weird state of Daemons in the book. Maybe the thing that has people most doubting them are some of the unit restrictions, which if so then a few of them are a bit odd, but don't really seem out of the realm of possibility from Games Workshop and locking things out of Codex's intent. If I had to guess whether or not these were real or fake, I'd personally guess that they'll turn out to be real, though I'm certainly not 100% sure and I have been wrong in the past. At the very least though, I thought they were interesting enough, talking through the possibilities for the Emperor's Children Codex, and I'd say the majority of them look pretty plausible and interesting. Jumping straight into these though, let's start with the rules for the big guy himself, and according to these text leaks, Fulgrim has 16 wounds, a 2+ save and a 4+ invulnerable, 6 OC and a 16-inch move. Given what we know about the other traitor Primarchs, this is pretty much exactly what I would have guessed here. The rest are toughness 11 with a 2+ save as well. Magnus and Angron both move 14 inches, and speed is generally Slaanesh's thing, so it seems entirely reasonable that he could be moving 16 inches just a little bit faster than them. I noticed on this leak that they didn't actually say the toughness stat for him, and if Mortarion is just a little bit tougher but also slower, it's possible he could be a little bit less tough but a bit faster. I'd still say it's likely to be either toughness 10 or 11 though. Otherwise, according to the leaks, his first ability is poison themed, and Games Workshop did say that he would have a poison ability of some sort. Apparently this one doesn't sound very exciting, some sort of mechanic special rule to pick an enemy unit and on a 4+ deal D3 mortal wounds to them. It wouldn't be all that great if so, though it's not like we haven't had Primarchs with underwhelming mortal wound rules elsewhere already, such as the Lion who lost the -1 to wound from that Emperor's shield. It might depend a bit on how that's handed out or to how many units, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a particularly important thing to his datasheet if it is real. Otherwise, like the rest, as we know, he'll have a choice of 3 different abilities to choose from. All the other Primarchs get that, and apparently his will be either fights first, -1 to hit for himself, and a leadership test if enemies want to fall back within an aura range. Again, that fits with the Games Workshop previews, who said that one of those choices would be fights first. If so, that is really quite massive on such an enormous, great big threatening model. A whole bunch of melee enemies just wouldn't really be able to threaten him all that well without taking enormous damage. Though the other two could both be really quite helpful if he didn't really care too much about melee threats. Just making him essentially tougher or that fallback thing could occasionally be absolutely ruinous against enemy gun lines. For the weapons, the league has them at 6 attacks at strength 14, AP 3, damage d6 plus 1 with sustained hits, or swapping out 2 sweep attacks with 12 attacks at strength 8, AP minus 2 and damage 2. again with sustained hits once again there. And then on top of that, he also gets a bonus 6 attacks with strength 6, AP -1, damage 1, maybe representing his tail or something. I've seen a few people not be massively over-enthused by that, but it does mean that he fights significantly harder than Magnus and much more than Morty. He doesn't have the sheer destructive power of the enormous damage characteristic of Angron, but at the same time means that he's overly good at butchering hordes of lighter stuff. And the sustained 1 does effectively up his attacks a bit as well. I feel like that's an adequately scary profile for a Primarch of his stature, particularly when we don't know what other options he's going to have from, say, detachment buffs. Also on top of that, he's got some sort of ranged attack with strength 8, AP -2 and damage 2, perhaps from that whip, the power of which would greatly depend on how many attacks he got and at what range. I feel like that makes him kind of adequately dangerous, maybe not an absolute melee monster like Angron, and a bit better at killing hordes of lighter stuff versus really, really tough stuff, but still does something like 15 odd wounds on average to something like an Imperial Knight or Repulsor Executioner. Then finally, apparently he's 385 points, though bear in mind that that could be really unreliable even if it was correctly leaked from the Codex. As we've seen with Deathcore Combat Engineers, it doesn't necessarily mean that that'll be the final points cost for them, and at first impressions that does feel about right really. Not quite the crazy multi-threat value of Magnus or the monstrous chance to respawn of Angron, but alright for a pretty terrifying model that has fights first with some of the scariest fighting stats of a lot of units that can get that. Overall seems interesting enough to me, given that he could also have other synergies from detachments and things, and the profile does at least seem to look consistent with the possibility of killing Angron if Games Workshop allowed him to use fights first in their conflicts. They said that he beat Angron in a few test games that they had, though I feel like with a good roll or two, Angron might just one-round him with a bit of luck. It might depend on whether or not they allowed him to use blessings, Fulgrim to use fights first, or if it's all just complete Games Workshop marketing hype to make the new model seem more exciting. Next up, and perhaps one of the things that stirred up irritation, is that the claimed leak said that these units wouldn't be in the Codex, and that's the Chaos Predator, Vindicator, Forge Fiend, Hellbrute, and Cultists. I feel like out of any of the information of it, this one is the one that seems the most either unlikely or surprising, depending on how you take it, though at the moment doesn't seem inconsistent with anything that Games Workshop said. When they revealed the Codex, they read through a bunch of units that would be in it, including the Demon Prince, Terminators, Spawn, Helldrake, Morfiend, Rhino, and Land Raider, and there was also a Sorcerer pictured in their big army shot, so it seems confirmed that he'll be in the book. A bunch of those do feel kind of surprising if they were indeed left out though. Perhaps the Predator tank will be the single weirdest one if they do have Rhinos and Land Raiders, particularly given that the other Deity Legions can all access them at the moment. The same goes for the Hellbrute as well. And the Forge Fiend would also be a surprise to not be allowed in the book if the Mauler Fiend's in, which it was confirmed. So that will be Games Workshop allowing one half of a multi-build kit but not the other there. Though again, maybe even that isn't without precedent with the Thousand Suns Mutalith Vortex Beast and the alternative build Slaughter Brute that doesn't have rules for Khorne or anything in 40k. If this does turn out to be accurate and these are indeed gone from the book, it will be a bit disappointing for any collectors that have these in their armies, particularly as they looked kind of likely from the Deity Codexes, though I would bear in mind for 10th edition we haven't actually seen any codexes for the other Deity Legions yet, they're all yet to come. We've only seen the index versions of the armies so far and got used to what they can field in those, and 10th edition has been an addition of a whole bunch of models removed from a whole bunch of armies. We don't 100% know that any of these units will be in any of those books either. Obviously a big question mark at the moment, though if these were indeed going away for Emperor's Children, it would be a shame to have them locked out of even more generic Chaos Space Marine kits than perhaps some of the other Deity Legions have in the past. Moving on though, according to the source, this is the answer to the question of their army rule. Games Workshop confirmed that the Emperor's Children army rule will be called Thrill Seekers, and this would allow them to advance and charge and fall back and charge, but with a few restrictions. I was wondering whether this could be locked to a certain amount of units per army or something like that, though according to the source here, the leak states that the restrictions are that basically only one unit that advance can charge the same enemy unit, so you can't advance multiple units at the same time and all dogpile into one big threat in the enemy army, and you also can't charge the exact same units that you fell back from this turn, which I think will be an interesting enough restriction, and maybe just make it a bit less of a boring rule that could allow you just to back out of a combat and then charge straight in to basically fight first once again very easily. As restrictions go, if that turns out to be right, then neither of those would be too onerous in my opinion, particularly the advance and charge one. Just with melee and 40k in general, things often tend to be charging enemy units just one-on-one, perhaps a bit more so than trying to multi-charge things. I still quite like to see the actual fine print of the rule, as I feel like small changes in language could be quite big differences here. Next up, for their supposed info on the Flawless Blades, they had just a couple of details to share. Apparently they move 8 inches, which looks like it will be consistent with that blurry datasheets that we saw for Lucius the Eternal. It seems that he moved 8 inches as best I could make out. And given that he seemed to be paired with them in the army shot artwork, and these guys are augmented with Slaanesh gifts, a faster movement stat seems fairly likely to me. Otherwise, they didn't really say too much about the rest of the unit. They said that their Bliss Blades apparently critical wound on a 3+ automatically, but don't have devastating wounds. And if that's right, then it'll basically mean that they just wound everything on the game on a 3+, no questions asked. But they only get 3 attacks, so don't have huge amounts of volume attacks. And I guess they'd be costed at a premium for being able to wound such big tough stuff like that so easily. I guess that would make them out as a unit that can take down really big tough stuff, but I suspect would be charged at a premium for being so general purpose. Just some similar melee elites, my guess for their Bliss Blades would probably be damage 2 and somewhere around strength 5 to 6-ish. Games Workshop said that they have some sort of special rule to increase their damage power by quite a bit, but they have the chance to suffer damage on their own unit if they don't get any kills, and that could be the way that they get critical wounds on a 3+ for all we know. Otherwise they're quite likely to be a squad of 3 to 6 models, and probably 3 wounds apiece judging by contemporary units like that. For Lucius the Eternal, there weren't huge amounts of things. They said that he doesn't get fights first if he joins a unit anymore, and he can only lead flawless blades. As mentioned, he was pictured with them and not noise marines in the army shots. Games Workshop gave us a glimpse at his datasheet in a very blurry format, plus a few rules hints. They said that he'd be a lone operative now, and in the stream they said when he fights alone he's just better, but didn't elaborate, and fights first could be the explanation for that. And otherwise, as mentioned, it looks like he might be toughness 5 from his stat line and an 8-inch move, and from that lead unit section it does indeed look like he can only lead one thing, and it does look like flawless blades from what you can make out of the incredibly blurry text. It's hard to make out his special rules too clearly though, so I'm not sure if there might be some changes to those. For detachments for the Codex, Games Workshop told us that there will be 6 of them. It looks like the leaks here have just had sort of a vague kind of description of a few of them. Said the stratagems were generally quite powerful, but not really gone into any huge detail. Apparently one of them gives dark pacts on the charge, which I guess would mean either sustained hits or lethal hits. And if they are going to go with the dark pact style rule from Codex Chaos Space Marines, I guess that would be with the chance to take some mortal wounds. Otherwise, they said that one gives uppy downy rhinos, so tournament slang for rhinos being able to return to reserves. It doesn't necessarily mean deep striking rhinos. Sometimes people use that to refer to things sort of outflanking and going around from strategic reserve, and that seems a very plausible rule for a sort of transport themed detachment. I feel like they could have that as one fast moving thing to get their elites into the foe nice and quickly. They do have 6 detachments, so I feel like they have to have some creativity to make some weirder and unusual ones. Finally, there was also something about pledging to kill X amount of units this turn, and then if you do so you can spend those points on army-wide buffs, and if that's the case then that does feel like a fun mechanic. Only really vague teasers about these though so far, if they're indeed real. For Chaos Demons, if the source is to be believed, then it could actually give us an answer to the fate of those in 10th edition Warhammer 40k, where there's been really quite a lot of speculation that they might not be getting a codex, or even supported as an army after the deity books come out. If they are getting a 10th codex though, I really don't know why Games Workshop wouldn't have said something about that, given the amount of concern there's been from demon collectors. According to this leak though, the demons just have the one detachment where you can take half your army out of those datasheets, and saying that it's similar to how Inari work with their Drukari datasheets, and otherwise you can't ally Slaanesh demons into the other detachments. If that's right though, then it would mean that the allied demon detachment, if anything, is far more restrictive than demon allied rules are currently. And it means that you wouldn't just be able to take random Slaanesh demons to help out any Emperor's Children army, it would just be in that detachment, kind of similar to the change that happened with Genestealer cults with Brood Brothers. If it does mirror the way that Games Workshop treated Inari, then the demon datasheets will just be reprints as opposed to the only way to fill Slaanesh demons. And again, at taking this at face value, it would probably be good evidence that the demons aren't going to be fully consolidated into the Emperor's Children book only, and this will just be one version of their datasheets. And the faction will live on it in 40k, either getting their own codex or just running with the detachments that they've got that are digital and online. I know Games Workshop have made certain things weirdly restricted in the recent past, say Deathwatch being locked into a subset of Imperial agents, but I'd just be surprised if Slaanesh demons were locked into only being half a detachment in a completely new faction. That just seems very unlikely to me. So it could be one good positive sign that their full faction status will stay around. I guess we'll wait and see there though, and as mentioned these leaks are absolutely unconfirmed at this point. Though if so, it does mean that Daemons allied with the sort of Deity Legion codexes will be far more restrictive than before, in the same way that Genestealer cults don't tend to make use of Brood Brothers quite so much unless you actually take the army that's themed around the Alliance. That does often seem to have been the way that Games Workshop have been keeping things in 10th though. Finally, there were just a couple of other things as well. Apparently Blastmasters having a range of 18 inches, which would be a massive tone down from 48 inches, which taken in isolation would certainly be a nerf to them, but given that we don't know their stats, or the Noise Marine stat synergies or points costs, doesn't really mean too much at this point. They could still be absolutely some of the best shooting in Warhammer 40k, we don't know without the rest of the rules. It maybe further make Noise Marines more of a close support shooting unit though, rather than a sit back and fire one. Otherwise, they also claimed that Terminators would only be in squads of 5 now, though they seem to describe them as strong in some way. Again, that seems plausible with other changes that Games Workshop have made, for example the Wraithguard and Wraithblades in the Eldari Codex, or the Deathwing Knights for Dark Angels. I guess the lack of flexibility wouldn't be particularly welcomed, but still is perfectly consistent with them being a usable and strong part of the army, even if it does look like they're not getting unique ones this time around. Overall, if the leaks do turn out to be accurate, they've touched on really quite a lot of the Codex. Games Workshop themselves did give us a bunch of other details though, such as Noise Marines only being in squad size 6, more sort of Havoc equivalents now, and potentially being toughness 5 with a slightly slower 6-inch move than the rank and file. We know they've got the Lord Exultant, which seems like the regular Chaos Lord equivalent, with this war gear and a melee power up called Euphoric Strikes. I guess he'd probably have the Captain Cheaper Stratagems rule maybe. The Lord Cacophonist gets a great big Doom Siren and a couple of pistols, and he gives Noise Marines sustained 1. And then the rank and file troops move 7 inches. They either get to be the Tormentors with sticky objectives OC2 and Infiltrate, or to run with combat blades and get the scout move with precision attacks for these Infractors, though I don't believe we know their special rule yet. Overall, as mentioned, I feel like if Games Workshop did deliver a codex that had something resembling those rules, I don't think it would be unexpected for Emperor's Children. Fulgrim seems scary enough to me, kind of crazy threat range if that's right, with a 16-inch and advance and charge built in, and then fights first or -1 to hit as needed. It seems like it would be a possible answer to what happened with Demons in the Codex that would fit in well with their recent Codex Eldari release, just in terms of the way that they've handled certain units before, which they hadn't been doing previously. A lot of the rest maybe seems a bit vague, but broadly plausible. Perhaps the weirdest thing is saying that certain generic Chaos Space Marine bits of kit like the Predator, the Hellbrute, and the Forge Fiends not getting datasheets in the Codex. I feel like that'd be kind of weird and probably some of the most annoying news. Though given 10th edition and a lot of datasheets getting a lot more restrictive or vanishing completely, it definitely doesn't seem out of the question to me. In any case though, at least at time of recording, I feel like there's at least a reasonable chance that they could wind up turning out to be real. If there's anything other interesting to skew things one way or the other though, I'll put that down in a pinned comment. I'll also likely cover anything else that we get on the channel in terms of leaks or rumours. In any case, looking forward to hearing what you make of the supposed leaks down in the comments below. Finally, before I leave off, I'll just cycle back to talk about the channel giveaway for March, which as mentioned will be for 8 viewers to get an Emperor's Children launch box set posted to them. The big one that contains the Lord Exultant, 12 Noise Marines, 20 Tormentors or Infractors, plus the new Codex and data cards. This one will follow all the normal rules for the channel giveaways. There'll be 2 equal ways to enter, links down in the video description. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any amount. That's the main thing that supports the channel and keeps all the videos coming, so a massive thank you to anyone doing that, and that gets you automatic entry each month. Alternatively, if you're not doing that, you can also support the channel via social media and boost those algorithms. That gives completely free entry. And to do that, you do these 3 actions: subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the Facebook page. And then to actually enter the draw, a giveaway post appears on the 1st of the month, in this case the 1st of March. And to enter in with the draw, respond to the post with a photo of any 40k mini or imagery, along with your name and the date handwritten within the same photo. That last bit just to deter Facebook bots and spammers and make sure the prizes go to real people. That goes live at midnight UK time. After 24 hours, I lock the post and do the draw, putting all the entries into a random number generator, no more than 1 entry each, picking out the 8 winners, and I'll announce them in the channel update video on YouTube around the 4th of March, as well as contacting the winners. Obviously, we don't know exactly when the box set will drop at this point, and the models will be posted after I've received my orders of them, if for some reason Games Workshop releases this unusually late. In any case, feel free to check out the Patreon page or the Facebook page if you want to enter for this one. I'll leave this one there for now though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this, while I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. As mentioned, check out the Patreon page if you'd like to support, as well as the giveaway entries. There's a few other things, such as seeing certain videos early, occasional votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and other stuff like names in the credits. A massive thank you to everyone who's supporting there, and just more generally to everyone for watching the video. I'll hope to see you guys next time.